Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. We thank GoFan and VNN, the exclusive sponsors of the UIAAA Connection. Now operating as one combined company, GoFan and VNN offer a seamless experience through digital ticketing and athletic websites. They make it easy to direct fans to one central place for schedules, communication, and tickets for both home and away events. We appreciate GoFan and VNN for their continued support and exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have as our special guest, Jen Gros, the Director of Growth and Partnerships at sportsYou. Jen, thanks so much for being on the podcast.
Yeah, Hutch, thanks for having me. Excited to be with you today.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience nationally and internationally now with the UIAAA, where you grew up, where you went to college, background, your first job, etc.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm born in Denver, avid Broncos fan, grew up loving sports at my dad's, following my dad's lead with that. I'm the third of four girls, so I think by me, he's like, all right, you're going to understand when Elway's quarterback, you're going to know what a fourth down conversion means. When you're a little kid, you're going to fly fish with me. You're going to love the water. So yeah, huge credit to my dad for that. And then I was raised splitting time between Columbus, Ohio, where my mom grew up, where she moved us back to in elementary school, and still my dad and stepmom being out in Colorado. So really influenced by life out west, life in the Midwest. My high school community was centered around sports. So I did dance and soccer and rowing in high school. I ended up rowing all 4 years of high school. Stopped playing soccer after freshman year to row year round. Ended up going to the Ohio State University, where I was lucky enough to be on the women's varsity rowing team with some incredible coaches and staff, including the first female strength coach at Ohio State, Coach D, who I still just love, respect, and admire, and am lucky enough to stay in touch with. And so my love of sports and power of sport and impact of that community coming together around sports has been inextricably tied to childhood through adulthood.
Awesome. So talk about how, well, I can understand it at Ohio State, but so when you got involved in rowing, I wouldn't think that Denver had as much opportunity as possibly Columbus.
Correct. So I was not rowing in Denver. I ended up going to school really starting early childhood in Columbus. And so Upper Arlington High School had a scholastic rowing team. And because we all came from the same high school, we could compete in both the scholastic regattas as well as club. And so, huge part of high school was getting up early on a Saturday morning and getting on a charter bus with who obviously became your best friends for life, because who else gets up that early and travels that far to work that hard together? And so we were Midwest champions when I was in high school, and I had the opportunity to look at some schools for that. Didn't really have a huge adult influence in my life around the time of my college decision. So I think looking back, I wish that I had been kind of more forthright with my coach or guidance counselor or college counselor, other people in my life, saying I'm kind of on my own trying to decide what to do with college at 16, 17 years old. I don't think I realized at the time what a huge opportunity it was to be a D1 athlete. And so when I got to Ohio State, I'd known the coaches from high school and had the opportunity to walk on there. And that was after turning down some recruiting letters, again, not knowing any better when I was that young. I think that's probably why I ended up a coach and a mentor to high school girls for many, many years. So you asked about my first job out of college, and I think it is tied to my job when I was in college. So when I stopped rowing, which is a full-time job at Ohio State, when I stopped rowing after 2 seasons, I immediately got involved as a volunteer youth leader and coach at a nearby community. So I became a volunteer high school soccer coach while I was still an undergrad. And that kind of brought together my Spanish linguistics degree and my 3 and into 4 seasons of coaching high school soccer in Columbus. I ended up moving to Connecticut to run a bilingual youth nonprofit and got right into coaching high school soccer a couple years after that. So I coached high school soccer at Norwalk High, which Norwalk is where I live now. And then I coached high school soccer at Wilton High after those girls had so much canceled during COVID. That was while I was working full-time at sportsYou. which, as my travels picked up quite a bit for sportsYou, I was not able to remain a head varsity coach. But yeah, coaching really took over after my rowing years. It went back to that love of soccer and of just believing in the power of a coach. And so I was coaching while running a nonprofit. And while I was coaching, I met the founder of sportsYou, and have been with them 8.5 years. So like I said, inextricably tied together, my life and sport for sure.
Now, allow me to ask you a follow-up then about your high school coaching career, particularly at Wilson. So talk about that as someone now who is not in a building, but someone who was a paraprofessional and now obviously works for sportsYou. Was it more difficult? Was it tougher to make connections with the other coaches in the building? And talk about the joy of just coaching those girls.
I think the greatest joy of coaching was just being to be with those kids every day. So I think, again, having run, I run events at City Hall for middle schoolers. I run, events for high school summer camps, weekend trips, everything since I was 21 years old. And I still believe the most profound impact on any adolescent is a coach. It's really interesting. Some of my early training, was in adolescent counseling, and to really move from childhood to adulthood, you have to answer the three questions of who am I, where do I belong, and do I matter, right? Identity, belonging, purpose. We're all trying to answer that in some level. And I think athletics does a really important thing of giving people a place to belong while they're figuring out, purpose and identity. And so for me, coaching is so important for kids to have a safe place where their character is developed as well as their skills. And so being a really competitive athlete and caring deeply for these girls matters a lot. And not being a teacher at the building definitely had its challenges where there wasn't that closeness where they stop in your room during your free period, or you see them during lunch,
Hmm.
or in the halls. I think that's incredible when there are teachers who are also coaching. And the last athletic director I coached under, like, his favorite thing is when he gets to hire a teacher as a coach, and it's so fun to see him light up, and that was his own background. I also think it's really powerful for athletes to see people that are leaders in the business world and leaders in other realms who choose, like, I didn't need a coaching job. I chose to give up that many hours a week, a month, a year, because I care so deeply for the communities and for the power sport.
That's awesome. Let me ask you this about rowing. Uh, when I was younger, when I was younger in high school, so this is a long time ago, kids were thinking about playing football in college, but we would always get, at least the football coach would always get one or two letters from Penn or some of these other schools back east about rowing, and we made jokes about it. But as I got older, I'm not sure everyone realizes what a grind it is and what a grueling and tough sport it is. So I want you to talk for a minute about the grind of rowing for 2 years in college.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think because I started it at such a young age in high school, started freshman year of high school rowing, that at that point it was after school practice, not, before school practice. But, I think with any full body sport that combines aerobic and anaerobic, so, you look at just a lot of them out there, I think, we're fresh off the Olympics, and I think a lot of us are just in awe, whether it's, Nordic skiing or the Summer Olympics. You look at swimmers. I think with rowing looks so graceful as a spectator. It is not a spectator sport in terms of the reality of it, but it is. I don't know. It is such a fun sport. It requires so much effort, energy, skill. But I always usually rowed in like eight man boats, and so there is something really magical about how simultaneously hard you're working, and that sound of the oars, clicking in the gunnels and the water rushing under the boat. It's unlike any other sport I've done. It's hard to, go pick up row. Like I can play pick up soccer now and those kind of things. So
Hmm.
I don't think it's as accessible, but the sport has come so far. Like, gone are the days where it's a backup plan for athletes. I mean, it is just, there's so many elite rowing crews and clubs throughout the entire country now, truly coast to coast. It's no longer this, only Ivy, only East Coast. There are incredible facilities that have been developed all over the country. You look at Bradenton, you look at youth nationals in Cincinnati. I mean, there's so many. So, and I'm not as involved in the sport now, but we're so lucky to have so many of some of the top rowing clubs, Maritime, Saugatuck, like that are, that are on sportsYou, and I have friends that are coaching, so I can follow it a little bit, but I mean, it really is amazing that the sport has developed so much, and it has always been this combination of strength and grace and a lot of grit in order to be a rower.
That's awesome. Allow me to ask you another follow-up about rowing because obviously I'm ignorant, and I think you might be the first person on podcast that's been a rower in college. But talk to me about the intricacies. You've got the eight-person, eight-man boat, and you have if I say this correct, coxswain, someone who's. So explain how that all works and how you've got to be in time, and if one person's off, and I mean, I just think that's fascinating. And so just take a couple of minutes to explain that for us uninformed.
Yeah, people say all the time timing is everything. And I think a rower understands it at such a different level. So if you think about, we'll take an 8-man crew for example. So the coxswain is facing forwards so that they are able to steer the rudder, the small rudder of the boat underneath. So they have like the ability to steer the rudder, and they're also connected to essentially think of it like a megaphone, but it runs throughout the boat. So the wiring throughout the boat. So they are, and even since I was rowing competitively, the technology's changed. So you can see the stroke rating, so how fast you're going per minute, how many strokes per minute you're doing. There's a lot now of data, like many sports available, but really your stroke rating and your strategy, there's sprint races and there's head races. So sometimes you are, several lanes across. That's what a lot of folks have seen in movies. And it is typically like a 2,000-meter race, but there's all different lengths of sprint races. And so there is strategy to how you cox a race. You're also, the way that a coach puts together the lineup of a boat, it really does have to do with power, with length of just a lot of things. So I would say for me, I was always coached so well that I just, wherever they put you in the lineup, you row. So people can row port or starboard or both. So you, in an 8-person boat, you're holding one oar and you're rowing either port or starboard. And again, you're facing backwards. So it's that balance of you don't see rowers trying their head outside of the boat. When it's going, you see people catching and finishing at the same time. And if you think about a boat in the water, like you wouldn't want a boat to, make a ton of progress in that drive of the oar, and then you recover really gracefully, right? Because all that power you want to maintain going in the correct direction. Because if you watch people at a gym, if you watch people on or a concept two rowing machine, a lot of times they throw their whole body into all the power and then they just slam back up to the machine and then throw their body back and slam back up. And that would literally make a boat go like this in the water, right? And so it's really learning that recovery, and there's so many drills you do for balance and recovery, and then obviously the strength required. And most people are surprised. They're like, oh, are your arms really strong? It is so much about the drive of your legs in rowing. And I don't think I can do as a full workout now what I used to do for a warm up. So it really is next level when you're in that team mindset. What you pull, like literally pulling your own weight and then more power beyond your own weight, is what makes you go faster. So there's an understanding that it is just the epitome of a team sport.
That is fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you for a moment about some of the mentors you've had in your life that have helped you both younger and in your professional life.
Yeah, gosh, I say often I feel so rich in friendship. I have peers and people further down the road in life that have always shown up for me. I think about looking back, neighbors when I was little, that would, take my sister and I on different trips, family vacations, best friends, parents who really took an interest in what we were doing. I had my grandma's next door neighbor growing up, just pulled me aside, taught me a lot as a teenager. And then I think about people that mentored me in my own sports journey, my own faith journey, my own academic journey. I think has all been really important to me. And every single aspect of my life is made better because I spend time around people further down the road than me and better than me in any given area. I think mentorship is invaluable to anybody that wants to grow and develop. And whether or not they know they need it yet, I think it's just really important. And I had a mentor tell me in college, and it was not an original expression, but one that stuck with me, that more is caught than taught. And I think when people just live life alongside of people and demonstrate and emulate the person that they want to be in that particular area of their life. It's really important. And I've had seasons in my life professionally where if I don't find that amongst peers, I will go seek it out with somebody in a different industry. So, and there's some people that mentor me by books that I read of theirs, podcasts I listen to. I try to take in quite a bit every day. I love to read. I'm not a big fiction reader because I just am constantly learning from people, whether it's coaches, business leaders. Rhonda Viteri is an incredible mentor to me. I've gotten to meet her personally several times, but just in reading her book, Grit and Grind, and seeing her as a guide for the first, Ironman triathlete with Down syndrome. Like I look at her and think that is the type of woman, business leader, and athlete I want to aspire to be. Like that's mentorship to me now.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you a little bit of a personal question here, Jen. What's your biggest failure or disappointment in life, and what did you learn from it?
Oh gosh. Funny, I think failures on me and disappointments typically on unmet expectations by others or circumstances. So I think of a couple big ones. Like I think not getting into the school I was dead set on going to. I didn't answer the coach's recruiting letter. I thought I could get it on my own. I had all the academics and the extracurriculars and everything else. And again, I didn't really have adults guiding me in that, but I was really, really crushed not getting into what was at the time my dream school. And then obviously ended up at Ohio State and loving it. I'm so thankful for that opportunity. But that was really devastating as I was ending my high school rowing career and academic career. And then I think personally, there was a really significant relationship in my life, and we thought that we were going down the road of marriage. And I found out the day before the wedding, he was living a very different life after his deployment to Afghanistan. And he came forward and told me, and we called the wedding off. And that was really devastating. I didn't feel like that was a personal failure, but it was certainly the most disappointing thing I'd ever experienced. And I think, again, one of the biggest things that life and sports specifically teaches you is resilience and what you can control. And I knew I wanted to choose to be grateful and not sit and be sad all weekend while everybody was in town. And it was a beautiful August weekend on the water. So threw a 4-day party and sent in the bill and haven't looked back. So there's personally and professionally, like certainly micro failures and disappointments along the way, but those were big fork in the road moments where you think that you do all the right things and something doesn't go your way, and how you respond is so important.
Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you a little bit more about coaching now. You've mentioned earlier all the places that you coached. And so since our audience is mostly ADs and some coaches, I want you to reflect back since you're no longer a coach. How has coaching changed now since when you first began?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I think that, and it's ironic because I work full time for a sports communication platform. And so because of sportsYou, we can be an extension of a coaching philosophy, of a well-run athletic department, of safe communication policies. And that's why I'm with sportsYou, because it's an extension of all the most like ideal and excellent things that you want an athletic department and a coach to do. And I say that very sincerely. I believe that as a coach. I think adolescence has gotten longer and longer and longer and longer, and you now have parents acting like adolescents, raising adolescents, and it just creates a really tough environment for athletic directors to protect coaches. I see some do it incredibly well, some learn really hard lessons. I think also with screens, school-based athletics is more important than ever to just put your phone in your bag and go outside and play. Like there's something so pure and good about that. And so I think for athletic departments to celebrate, playing, connecting in an analog way, right? And certainly using technology as a tool, but not only connecting via that. And I think the biggest thing is that both parents and students and coaches, like coaches are not all innocent in this, like are so willing to say things behind a screen rather than have a face-to-face conversation or hard conversation, or have that that level of connection that really does create a culture that everybody wants to coach in, everybody wants to play for, everybody wants to be a part of, right? That is irreplaceable, right? And so I think people are willing to say things desensitized to the consequence of their words now in a way that wasn't the case when I was a coach, when I was an undergrad, when I was a competitive athlete. Like there is the pendulum seems to have swung really far in the direction of anything flies on a screen, and then people really lack the skills to have hard conversations face to face and to take hard feedback in the same way now face to face than I think was the case, 15, 20 years ago.
That is some great insight. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you one more question before we get to the big question. So what's one common myth about coaching you'd like to debunk to the general public?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I have the finger on the pulse to know a common myth about coaching. I would hope that more people would get involved in coaching and seek out mentors and training and opportunities to coach. I think a lot of people think, oh, I have to have been this skilled athlete in that specific sport in order to coach it. And I learned far more about the sport of soccer most years as an assistant varsity coach. I learned far more about the X's and O's. I mean, there's kind of four main areas that you coach, and there's the psychosocial or social emotional, there's the physical, there's the technical, and there's the tactical. And I learned so much more about the last two as a coach than I ever did playing the sport. And so I think, and I've seen some legendary, like absolutely coaching dynasty coaches who never played the sport even. So I think that the myth that you have to like know a ton about the X's and O's or be somebody that you see on TV in that sport, like I think if you have like a good mentor, an AD who cares that you care about kids in the community and cares that you want to learn about the sport and puts you in an environment to win, like I think more teachers, more para educators, more I just think more people from within those high school communities and middle school communities would step up and coach. If there were opportunities to do so without being a building teacher, if they knew that there's so many resources available for practice plans and the technical and tactical side of things.
Well said. So let me add, here's the big question, and obviously one of the reasons we had you on. I know you mentioned this earlier just for a brief moment, but I want you to talk about sportsYou, about how it came to be, and you mentioned how you first got involved. So go more into depth there, and then I'm just going to give you the time to explain all the positives about it because obviously we use it here in the Utah Association, and since I'm no longer the executive director, I'm not sure how many we have in the schools, but it's such a great platform. So I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I really feel so lucky that this has been my job in my life for the last 8.5 years. I love getting to serve athletic directors, athletic director associations, our governing body partners, coaches associations, and really all those people that are caring for coaches and kids, right? That's what it comes down to. That's why we're all in this job. And anything school-based athletics and adjacent, believing in that impact is huge. So sportsYou launched as a communication platform, and I was attending a coaching conference in Connecticut. And like many of us do, there was a vendor hall. I walked through it. I got the quick little pitch and I walked away, right? We all do that with so many vendors and those booths that are set up. And so I came back and I met one of the reps at the time, and I met Brad, the founder. And at the time, I was coaching 2 youth teams, and I was an assistant at a U9 and U11 team, and I was an assistant high school coach. And I had just finished my years running this nonprofit of middle school and high school clubs and volunteers and just having all those different moving pieces. And we were piecing together the shared Google Calendar, the group me, the email distribution list, like kind of all those different buckets of people. You were just putting together 4 or 5 different tools. And I remember looking at sportsYou being like, you know what, if I was still leading all those different groups of people, I would absolutely use this. And so I went and got the head coach, and we looked at it, and he implemented it the next season. And I had a lot of friends that were in all different levels of coaching, and they were all doing the same thing. And everyone kind of went, this is really easy to use. This is a really clean communication platform built for coaches. And so when I was actually looking at jobs the same week at Notre Dame in South Bend that I was hired with sportsYou, and I had a choice to make, and I didn't really want to leave the Northeast and move to Indiana. And so I tried on life there for a week. I got an amazing job opportunity to work with incredible people. And it was a sports tech startup, right? Who knew how long that would last? There's a lot of companies that come and go in this space, and we have an incredible family behind our company from an investment standpoint. We have an unbelievable team that all of our own, like engineering, coding, everything is done in-house, like everything. And so we have an incredible product team. And we had a small, scrappy group of, most of us were all, college athletes, and we really wanted to get this in the hands of as many coaches as possible. So in the fall of 2017, I started working with Section 1 in Westchester County, New York, and it was school to school. And these ADs were like, oh, this is great. This is for my coaches. I love this. Thank you. And so it was really in New York State that we started to grow in the school market. And then I had friends that were playing and coaching club sports and men's league hockey and club rugby and co-ed flag football. And every one of them needed something that was communication, calendar, file sharing, photos, right? And just could do that in one free app. There's not a ton of clutter, noise. You're not going to see all these pop-up ads, like everything that was kind of out there at the time. And so that was really the genesis of my time at sportsYou. And then when we started working with the Texas High School Coaches Association and the Texas High School Athletic Directors Association, I got a glimpse into really the scope and excellence of the associations that support the athletic directors and the coaches at that kind of professional development level. And so we're so lucky to work with Coach Martin and Coach West in THSCA and really become the communication platform for coaches in Texas. And that's when we really decided to focus on school-based athletics. And so we've changed some of our safety features, right? Like you can't create a team or add a contact if you're under 18. We now have single sign-on you can continue with Google, that just launched recently. Like our team is constantly listening to how can we get safer and safer for schools. Really important to know, and you've heard me say this 100 times such, we are the only American-owned school-safe communication built for coaches. That is so important to know. So your data is not leaving the United States, housed in servers in Singapore and South Korea and other places. You are able to have a company that is, like I said, based here in New York, that is serving school-based athletics in all 50 states now, not even just coast to coast. We now have schools and associations that we get to work with in Alaska and Hawaii, right? And so having an American-based company that is school-safe, meaning any communication that happens with any coach or any kid in your district, you as a school district can pull the chat history of. Super important. You asked me earlier about how things have changed with people willing to fire off stuff on their phones. Like emotions run so high in school-based athletics, right? Kids have their social life intertwined with their playing time, intertwined with their friends that are in the stand. Like they want to get out there and play. And so when a kid doesn't get that playing time and a parent is devastated and they're angry about it, they might say something or fire off something, or a new young coach has a lot of emotions running high and fires off a message that's totally out of bounds for communication standards that athletic director is teaching. And so that AD can reach out to us and say, hey, I need a chat history between Coach Jen and Hutch in these dates, and we provide it. And so I think that's a huge, huge reason that I, as a coach of so many seasons, like I'm so proud of sportsYou. And I think every coach should be on sportsYou, because it protects you, it protects the school, it protects the athletes, right? And then I think that the fact that we have been able to stay free to schools is huge. So we offer all of our core features for free to schools. We have also been listening to a ton of users ask us for more bells and whistles, and can you do this, and can you add that? And the answer is in technology, yes, we can. We can't do everything for free forever, right? We are really fortunate underwrite the cost of sportsYou for school-based athletics and for our current features to be free and stay free. What we'd like to do is add some of those bells and whistles under our sportsYou Pro. So if you've seen a little banner or that's come up for you, sportsYou Pro is going to have, for a very, very, very small fee, very small, it's going to have some of those like extra bells and whistles and modes and style differences that people are asking for the individual user to buy, right? So we've just started launching that. And really exciting now because we have the best customers, users, people in the world using sportsYou. We want to celebrate the story of school-based athletics. And so we have the sportsYou network, which we're inviting people to just follow that page. And eventually we'd like to invite partners and brands who are like, you know what, we want to help invest in school-based athletics too. And so they would help underwrite the cost of sportsYou growing in more communities. And you can take sportsYou with you to youth sports and to summer camps and clinics and travel tournaments and all those things. And so we're looking right now for mission-driven brands and partners that we will vet everything that they would bring to us and help, again, underwrite the cost of sportsYou. So we're excited about the sportsYou network. We're excited about sportsYou Pro, and we're really thankful to keep our core offering free to schools.
Perfect. So let me ask you now, obviously about the connection with the NIAAA, more specifically the state executive directors, which is where we first met. I just know that, and I'm on sportsYou 3 or 4 times a week, and I'm retired. And of course, I broadcast, not broadcast, but I advertise the podcast every Friday through all my sportsYou groups in the NIAAA, course chairs, national faculty, all those types of things, Utah attendees at the Tampa conference, et cetera, et cetera. So share with our audience observations about working, because I think you've been with the executive directors now, the NEDC. I want to say it's been 6 or 7 years
It's
since
been
you
since
first
our Illinois
started.
trip. Since our Seattle trip. So
Yes, yeah, it was 2021, right? Yeah.
yeah. So it's been really incredible focusing on each summer with the NEDC, with each of the state executive directors. I think that there is, you know, an opportunity when executive directors get together and they share best practices to say what's really serving our association. And I think huge credit to ADs that have come out of the school buildings and have retired, certainly still working very hard, but that have retired, and they say, you know, how is this landscape changing? And sometimes people say, you know what, technology is not my thing. I don't understand how to use sportsYou, but there's somebody on my board that does, or there's an active AD that's our state president this year, and they do. And so it's been really fun to serve the states, which there's about 34, 36 right now that we have active in service partnerships with for each of the state associations, where, I mean, you just rattled off a list of custom teams and groups that state and national associations have done. What's great about sportsYou is you can acknowledge that a group message gets really cluttered and emails don't often get read, or somebody hits reply all, right? And there's just all this noise. But the ability to create as many custom groups as serve your association or your conference of ADs. I coached in the FCX conference, and we had an email thread of the FCX girls head coaches. I wish we'd had a sportsYou group at the time for that, right? And so just the idea of having one really guarded place that becomes your hub of communication is really important. And so with the executive directors, every state operates a little bit differently. So learning from each state, watching you all share with each other, and saying, okay, how can we come alongside of where you are as a state right now and help you improve communication, help you with membership engagement, help your reach beyond the conference. And so we work really well for states that are using final forms. I mean, that association management platform will be an absolute game changer in your states as far as knowing who your members are, who they're not, right, where they went. There's just so many useful tools to manage your association on final forms. And then once they've registered for that conference or registered for your state association, having sportsYou as that threaded back and forth communication throughout the year. And a lot of people, it develops into its own entity for that state. So there's, I think of Washington and Oregon, which talked about Linwood, but, they have female AD groups there for that community, that connection. There are new AD groups that form. There are different, I think about Michigan, South Carolina, where we're going in the next couple of weeks, where there's regions and districts and classifications within those states. So those ADs have their own groups. And so it's really what best serves you, and then we'll help in any way that we can.
That is so well said. Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. And I will just give you and the company a plug, because it is so easy. I've set up groups myself, and as I said before, I'm members of 6 or 7 or 8 groups, and that communication, my goodness, all the big information from the NIAAA now comes out through sportsYou, and it's so easy. So if you're not using it in your state, I would suggest you do it. Let's finish with a couple of questions. The first one being this. You've got 2 suggestions for a brand new athletic director, and they need to follow Jen's suggestion in order to be a success. What would your 2 suggestions be?
I would say be kind to yourself as you prioritize. That's number one. I feel like everything seems urgent to a new AD. So be kind to yourself as you
Mhm.
prioritize your days, your hours, your minutes. Uh, and I would say welcome the disruptions carefully. So what I mean by that is the best ADs I've coached under, people walk into their office all the time. Their day is disrupted constantly. I get to work with ADs and they're like, oh, sorry, I can't make the meeting now. There's 17 things that just happened outside my door, right? Like that's just the life of an AD. But I also think that ADs really find a way to get in the office at some times they're going to be guarded and uninterrupted. So they welcome the disruption. And then they also learn to say no really well, or they learn to put protocols in place where a parent cannot just come in and start yelling about something. A coach, if a coach has equipment needs, there's a really, really good system for that. If the grass fields are closed and coaches are panicking because they have a playoff game tomorrow and they don't know where they can practice, like there's systems in place. So those disruptions still come, but they're coming because you've protected yourself with some good systems, chains of command, expectations around communication, what's acceptable, what's not. So I think you don't have to say yes to everything. But certainly disruptions are inevitable in the life of an AD, and I think having some scaffolding around that is really important.
Well said. Thank you for sharing that. We'll finish with this. Jen, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask?
I would not dare, you do this all the time. I would not dare pretend to be the expert in that. I think we talked a lot about the why and the what. I think the
Mhm.
how we didn't really get to get into. So how do they stay connected to those incredible groups with NIAAA? I would say, and that to me, that's such an understood value that maybe it should have been one of my one or two, but I would hope that nothing an AD does, they do alone, ever, 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 ever. So join your state association, join your national association. Like that is just a non-negotiable as an AD. I wouldn't even recommend it. I would just say that you cannot do that job alone ever. And so, find those resources in other people's templates and systems and mistakes that they've made and learned from. So I would say, how do I join my NIAAA groups on sportsYou? There's 8 codes. Make sure that you get them from NIAAA or from your state liaison. But I would say join those NIAAA your section's membership group so you can get resources from
Mhm.
Phil, Becky, Rich, and they're, all of the leaders within the association all the time. And then how do I get involved at the state level? We talked a lot about state associations, but if I'm a new AD and I'm not in that kind of like old boys club of everybody that's known each other forever, and it seems like this incredible, it's like you walk into the cafeteria and everybody's already best friends. Like, I'm just gonna go sit by myself over here and hope I figure it out. Like you want to have that invitation, that how do I get connected? How do I find a mentor? So the how, I think, is something we didn't get a chance to jump into, but is really important.
Well, thank you for sharing that. On that note, that wraps up this edition of the UIAAA Connection podcast. Again, our special guest today has been Jen Gros, the Director of Growth and Partners at sportsYou. Jen, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to be with us today.
Hutch, thanks for having me, and feel free to share my contact information if anyone wants to reach out anytime.
Perfect. For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.